From the top, gentlemen, from the top.
Hello darlings, welcome back to my channel. Unlike my previous home videos, this one is partially a call out, warning, and an educational video. The original video is only available to those that have the link, but in all honesty, it was my first, and I was brash, I was rude, vulgar, and I did not respect my audience. That is why I'm re-uploading again, as an apology, but to my audience. And I want to make that crystal clear that I meant everything I said to Staz and Kique in my original video. In fact, this first section is meant for them, since for some ungodly reason, they won't talk to me. Imagine my shock. Also, I do have to cut out a lot of the shade situation in this video. However, if there's any interest, I will do a separate video posting about what transpired as a cautionary tale when dealing with Staz or Kique. Let me know in the comment section if you would like to see this. As a disclaimer, I do not condone or encourage anyone that views this video to send hate, harass, or troll people mentioned in it. If you want to vent, please be sure to leave a comment to drive up my engagement. This video is for satirical and informational purposes and falls under the Fair Use Clause outlined by the United States. I have a bachelor's degree in the English writing field. I am a hobbyist writer, but I will likely publish my own work later down the road. I'm a beginner artist, and I have no ties to the legal community, nor do I represent them. Some of the points made in this piece are my personal thoughts and opinions. I have done the research for this piece, and if I have gotten something factually wrong, by all means correct me. I will make a correction and admit to being wrong. If you disagree with the points made in this video, more power to you. If you really want to shut me up, then show me proof of any information that's incorrect. Understand, I'm not afraid of Staz, Kique, or their followers. With those disclaimers out the way, let's get started. If you want to fast forward to the beginning of the script and just skip the messages that I have to say towards Staz, I will leave a timestamp. Otherwise, let's just move the camera closer, a little bit more, and perfect. This is just me speaking to Staz and Kique. I'll be using Staz's name here since technically she is the one that caused this video to be made. But if Kique thinks I'm talking to him, he damn well can. Staz, you are a certified coward. I've watched time and time again you go after smaller artists that do the tiniest of transgressions. You will send your army of supporters after someone time and time again and bend time and space to make it seem as though you are right to someone that knows better. The original target that set this video in motion was your attack on Shade, and she did something that you aren't used to happening. She fought back. I pray that most people know your true colors do the same thing, as you are a habitual liar, and you are so stuck on your own little world. Contrary to what you think of yourself, you are just like any other artist. When it comes to improvement, you can definitely use a few pointers that isn't Kique, since he doesn't know what he is doing either. I've seen only a snippet of your earlier works that didn't involve home, and I have to say that your works had a lot more personality than the current pieces. That is of course my opinion. In either case, if you're going to go after other artists for copying your style, you need to educate yourself on what that actually means. The following topics will dive deep into the various subjects that you seem to be confused by. Anyone else that stumbles upon your content, please be aware that this behavior is typical of Staz to intimidate, bully, harass, and otherwise make your life miserable. Allegedly. On with the show. A copy can be defined as a direct art piece that mimics the original artistic picture or design. Copying is not necessarily a bad thing, but it does depend on the context. Some examples of copied work include books, prints, plastic or metal molds, newspapers, CDs, DVDs, and other 3D modeling blueprints. When you think of these items, it makes sense that each book, each newspaper, each blueprint needs to be the same. The point of these inventions is to mass produce an item for public consumption. If you wonder why some art pieces cost more than others, this is one component as to why. A print of an artwork creates more on the open market. Take for example an action figure. If a company makes 100 copies of a Superman product, but only 10 copies of a Batman figure, although Superman is popular, the Batman figure will be worth more. Famous artworks from Picasso or Leonardo da Vinci are rare because only the original work survives and there is no other known duplicated piece by them. As you can see, in these instances, having a copy of the item isn't a bad thing. An author of a book needs to make sure that the same information is relayed to their customer for consumption. Inventions like the printing presses and molds are able to make sure that each item is the same for each customer. With that said, copying or making copies is not fundamentally a crime. Context and intent matter, so keep this in the back of your mind as we dive deeper into the faults of Staz and Kique. The irony here is that Staz used to have her own art style. This is actually one of the questions she gave me a direct answer for in the old Leafa Discord. She claims that the style changed because her ex hurt her, and every time that she used that style, it reminded her of her ex or something crazy like that. Now before we move forward, I'd like to show you some pictures that she did in her old style. I mean, look at them. They all had personality, the colors and lines flowed fluently, and it looked like a unique piece of work that somebody would be proud of. Since she's gotten together with Kique, this type of art from her is non-existent because she practices so hard trying to mimic Kique. A large portion of her original content is based around the world and lore that Kique has created. Hell, even the reason that the Bayou breed exists is that it is based on her own in real life dog. Now, let's say, hypothetically speaking, Staz and Kique break up for whatever reason. In theory, all the intellectual property that Staz is using is owned by Kique. This means that every single drawing, sketch, hell, even a commission could be subject to the DMCA takedown notice. More on that topic later. Although, as a side note, I'm sure there are also legalities and technicalities involved, so I would need to ask an attorney on how this would work. So before I break down what a reference actually is, I need to first let you know what types of things are considered references for the sake of this part, since we're going to be walking through a room full of nails. A reference could include in real life models, 3D program models, pictures, videos,
which is what I just did for Dwight. Would I rather be feared or loved? Easy, both. I want people to be afraid of how much they love me.
books, stock images, vectors, clip art, etc. References can be broken down into a light reference, which is a few glancing seconds, a medium reference, which is looking back and forth every now and then, and a heavy reference, which is you look at the subject matter frequently. Usually it's in your line of sight at all times. You will notice that all of these things are artistic media of some kind. We need to go back to what I said earlier regarding the intent of a work. Now, I'm not implying that all artists use references, because some may not, and the work that they produce is phenomenal. Usually, if an artist falls into this category, they have had years of artistic work on graphic design under their belt, which can include honing their unique style and technique for getting into the final end product. Staz sadly does not fall into this category. Again, feel free to call me an asshole, but her art pieces still have common mistakes in them, from anatomical issues, perspective, proportions, and the general execution. She even admits to using references, so to an extent, she knows that she needs to improve. However, the issue that we run into is that the artwork that Staz claims is hers is really just a reference slapped on top of her style on it. Even her backgrounds are just blurred images that she yanks from Google without crediting. Now you might be asking yourself, why is this bad? Well, in this instance, she's acting like only she can use references, regardless as to where it comes from, and not only doesn't she acknowledge where she got her reference from, but she'll attack other artists for doing the exact same thing that she's doing. The second part is that she's making money off of someone else's work. If she wasn't being paid for this and just practicing or even tracing, very few people would care because that is how we first learn. There are times when tracing is actually okay and no credit needs to be given, which brings us to our next topic. The best way to define what a trace is to think of it as artistic plagiarism. It is when you take an original work and outline a character or scene and create it as your own piece of work without crediting the source. That is, you literally outline the image. A good indication to see if a trace has occurred is comparing the original image to the suspect image. When you take both line arts of the images, they should line up nearly perfectly. Sometimes, to hide a trace, an artist may flip it, frankentrace, and we will get to the definition shortly of that, blow it up, or minimize the subject. The image is still considered a trace. And for clarification, just because you change the tail, ear, or leg position, it is still considered a trace and you may still be subject to the copyright and DMCA laws. And again, we'll get to that in a second. I'm not sure why Staz believes that if you trace a photographic image, then there isn't the same thing as tracing a 2D picture, but there is no distinction. Unless an image is fair use, you are technically breaking the law. You better hope that no one informs the copyright holder of this and proper action can be taken. This is why most artists frown against tracing for the following reasons. Tracing does not help you grow as an artist since it doesn't encourage you to analyze your work. Drawings can appear flat and one-dimensional. This is because the loss of volume and values that are harder to replicate rather than learning to feel what would make a drawing more 3D in appearance. Tracing can lead to an unhealthy dependence and become a crutch when drawing. You'll never want to branch out and try new things. You'll never improve your craft. Tracing doesn't always lead to good results, both from the finished product perspective and the moral one. Think of your favorite author or artist. Like you, they started from nothing, but they were willing to try to push their craft to the limit. If you are willing to work hard for something, the reward and lasting legacy will be felt. I don't believe that you can achieve this with tracing. And here are some counter-arguments for tracing. It is used to provide consistency and save time. In the golden age of Disney, CGI did not exist. Animation was done by hand drawings and limited technology of computers at the time. In order to get the flow of the character to transition smoothly, tracing is a standard practice. This can be applied to comics as well. Tracing can decrease your observational awareness to create accomplished looking drawings. You start to learn forms of the subject matter if you trace, and you can understand anatomy, structure, identify vanishing points, and foreshortening. My opinion on tracing is this. If you are doing it to study anatomy, to hone perspective, to improve yourself and find a unique style, tracing is acceptable. However, my issue is when artists are being paid a commission and they trace someone else's product without the consent of the original artist of the piece. I also believe that it is morally wrong to not explain to the commissioner that they aren't paying for a unique pose, but just having colors slapped on a pre-existing work. Basically, when money starts to become involved in your products, tracing should be kept to the bare minimum unless you're willing to be transparent about it. Again, like copying, I wouldn't say that tracing is bad on its own. It depends on your intention and most importantly, where the source came from, which brings us to our next topic. As a side note, I did want to say something on the term frankentracing. This isn't an official term, but one that I've seen used colloquially in a particular group that I hang out with. It involves using two stock images to morph into an original picture, but the line art to both images can be perfectly overlaid to prove that tracing of the original image has occurred. Staz and Kique do this a lot in their comic to throw off critics accusing them of tracing. Once again, they never credit the original sourcage, which leads me into the next subject. When you take a picture that you have no personal input into its creation, such as a photo, drawing, sketch, piece of writing, video, etc., and claim the work as your own, this includes removing a watermark, changing a slight aspect of the character scene by doing a modified color, addition, subtraction of the original work without crediting, asking an artist. When the suspect picture is lined up with the original work, the similarities are very easy to see, and the line art and other aspects of the drawing will match up without the need for manipulation such as stretching, shrinking, or distortion. Stealing is frowned on in the art community, and those that aren't careful may be subject to DMC takedown notices, legal ramification, and even account suspensions depending on where the infraction took place. So now that we can identify what may or may not breach a copyright, let's assume that as a graphic artist, you feel like your copyright was breached. What are your options? The important step is filing a DMCA takedown notice on the site which the stolen artwork is being hosted on. But what is a DMCA law and how is it applied? The Digital Millennium Copyright Act, or DMCA, was a law that was made with the intention to control copyrighted material over the internet. Since the internet was just starting out, websites were concerned that pictures uploaded on their server and viewed would be penalized for showing copyrighted material. The workaround was that if a copyright holder filed a DMCA takedown notice, regardless as if it is the site holder or a user of the site uploaded the picture that was copyrighted, they would not be legally liable. When a DMCA is filed, there are two things the website holder must do. The first is to inform the account holder that a copyright notice has been enacted. The second is to let the copyright holder know that the letter was sent out. This action will allow the website holder to be free from legal actions. From there, the account holder usually has two options. The first is that they can ignore the copyright claim and go about their business. If this happens, the copyright holder feels that there is a case of infringement, the account holder can be sued. The second action that can happen is that the account holder can remove the picture. By doing this, the copyright is upheld and by the copyright holder. Lastly, the account holder can declare a counterclaim against the copyright holder, which again, a court order is filed and the two parties will work it out that way. It is understood that if a DMCA is filed, the copyright holder made the claim in good faith, i.e., meaning that what they have seen or heard is a violation. Artists that abuse the system are looked at poorly in the community. What I described is a very basic thing that can occur for claims. There may be exceptions, but again, I'm not a lawyer and I only wanted to make a point. Staz and Kique have actually threatened to use DMCA before on their artists in the past. So if the picture that Shay did was oh so close to the original, why didn't she file a claim this time? It's very simple. There was no case that she had. Staz even admitted that she doesn't own the pose, and there was no way that she could enforce a takedown. This is why she harassed Shade and intimidated her to take down the picture instead of filing a takedown notice. There are some instances where images used don't need to be credited, which brings us to our next topics. As I mentioned previously, images and videos that are available from Google or popular sites such as DeviantArt, ArtStation, For Infinity, Pinterest, YouTube, etc. are not necessarily free to use. Just because you can access a picture or video does not mean that it doesn't have copyrights associated with it. In fact, a good rule of thumb is to assume that a copyright exists and artists should act accordingly. So how do you get out of this? Well, the simplest method is that you take your own in real life pictures of yourself or your animals. Since you took the picture, guess what? You're the copyright holder. If you want to trace your own images, you have the right to. You don't have to even credit yourself since you are the one that took the picture. If you want to be on the safe side of knowing if the image is free to use, and this means tracing, modifying, altering, you need to look for something called a Creative Commons license. Images can be found using the advanced search options under Google or most search sites. Another option is to sign up for a Stock Images website. These sites offer customers pictures, vectors, and even videos for fees. If you yank stock images from a site without paying membership dues, that is considered stealing, and DMCAs can be enforced by the stock image site owner. If you do use stock images or Creative Commons for your own art, then fine. I'm not saying that it is a bad thing, but the issue comes when credit is not being given. What you can also do, for those that don't even want to mess around with art programs or pay license fees, is use artistic dolls. I personally have a program called Design Doll, but there are figures that you can buy online and other media that will help you understand how bones, muscles, and anatomy work. Staz, Kique, go back to the basics. There are so many anatomical errors in your pieces and dogs that constantly look like they are broken in places. And no, these are not anthropomorphic animals in your drawings. They are feral. Anyone in the furry community will laugh at you if you try to say that your quadruped dogs are human-like. You know, Staz, as educated as you always claim you are barely getting a neuron to fire off with your sequence of reasoning. Like a regular picture, any of these are often made by artists. Some are fair use, which we've already covered. Some are free with credit explicitly shown. Some are pay for use, others are not. In the case of all these different types of media, caution should be given. I highly recommend you ask before using pictures if they don't already have a pay-for-use options, or if the artist explicitly states that it is okay to use their templates, etc. to stay out of legal trouble. I'm not sure why people think that if you find something on the internet, it is yours to do with without citing the source or giving credit to the creator of the product. This is something that Staz and Kique do on a consistent basis. They will use images that they find on Google, Pinterest, YouTube, make modifications, and then claim it as theirs. It doesn't work that way, and this continued practice is dangerous and guaranteed to get them into legal trouble if they mess around with the wrong person. Think of that when you were writing a book report in high school or college. Your teacher will want you to use sources, yes, but I guarantee you also had to include a bibliography or citations within your notes. If your teacher did not, then they don't deserve to have their job. This is basic knowledge in English 101, and the reason why you can't just copy and paste a document and slap your name on it. This is why you can't take an image off Google and turn it into a t-shirt for profit, nor can you sell a photograph that you didn't take the picture from. Keep in mind, all the pictures and videos that you see online should be treated like they hold a copyright, unless explicitly stated by the artist in question. This brings us to another topic that I need to go over. So what is fair use? Well, I yanked this one from copyright.org. Fair use is a legal doctrine that promotes freedom of expression by permitting the unlicensed use of copyrighted protected work in certain circumstances. Section 107 of the Copyright Act provides the statutory framework for determining whether something is fair use and identifies certain types of uses, such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research, as examples of activities that may qualify for fair use. This law pretty much says that to an extent you can use copyrighted material without the use of asking a creator's permission. Now, depending on the platform, such as YouTube for instance, it might be tricky to prove. As an example, sometimes I watch videos from Project Mouthwash and Team 4-Star. These creators use edited and copyrighted materials such as from the anime Bleach and Dragon Ball Z. What makes it fair use is that a lot of the time the anime episodes are cut to sync with the original script that has nothing to do with the original source material, aka a satire, which would fall under this clause. Now in the case of artwork, especially digital, how does this fair use get applied? This goes back to what I said before. What is the intent of the artist in question? Some are innocent and wish to learn anatomy or how movement works. Others are more malicious in that they are deliberately trying to copy the artist for either clout, views, or other means. However, you will notice that with these definitions, the types of uses do not contain any monetary compensation. And Staz, just because I know you like to do these things, I'm going to go ahead and touch on these topics. So if you try to do this with other people, they know their rights, or at the very least are aware of how you operate. So, besides sending the White Knights to go after a person, Staz and Kique also engage in something called defamation. Now let's go over the definition of it. According to Morgan & Morgan law, defamation is when an individual's character or reputation is tarnished as a result of a fraudulent statement or action of another individual. Defamation can be broken into two types: spoken, which is called slander, and written, which is called libel. Thankfully, no one wants to listen to Staz's mean girl shrieking, so only limit this to libel. If you live in the United States, the last major case of defamation that you might have heard of was when Rudy Giuliani promoted the Diamonds voting machines were broken, unreliable, or faulty. The same principles can be applied here, since Staz will turn anything small into a larger matter. And while a small creator might not take her to court over these statements, mark my words, you're going to run into someone that won't back down. I don't need a crystal ball to see that a defamation lawsuit is in your future. From Merriam-Webster, doxing is to publicly identify or publish private information about someone, especially as a form of punishment. And this definition is from Google. Search for and publish private or identifying information about a particular individual on the internet, typically with malicious intent. Notice that in both definitions, they state that a punishment type of effect can happen when a dox occurs. And Staz, you can't just claim that because Shade's account was a public, it can be shared within the circle jerk of friends that you have. Shade is a small artist. She isn't a public figure like a senator or a CEO. You gave out her name with the express intent to do harm. This is the reason why you bothered to dox her Instagram account when you wanted people to go after her, which is exactly what happened. You have a habit of twisting words to suit your own logic, but mark my words, you are being watched. The last thing I want to mention is the weaponization of mental health. Unless you have been properly diagnosed from an actual psychiatrist, stop using the excuse that you have mental issues. It's disingenuous to people that are actually suffering from mental illness, and the only reason why Staz keeps using this narrative is to protect herself from criticism that you rightfully deserve. Also, if you know that you have a mental health and you are not seeking treatment, that is very much a you problem. And because I know that people will call me an asshole for thinking this way, for the record, even when Staz knows that people have mental health or in real life problems, she has no qualms about attacking them without an ounce of remorse. That is why I'm not inclined to believe what she says about her mental health, allegedly, because she sure goes on the attack time and time again, and I've never seen her try to use self-care methods to stabilize her supposed problems. If the internet and the people on it are as toxic as you say, instead of blocking them, you engage with them until the victim bends the knee and does whatever you want. In this case, it was getting the picture taken down or giving her dumbass credit for a pose that she rightfully admitted to not owning, which I still don't understand what she was bitching about in the first place. Anyone that deals with Kique or Staz needs to understand that they aren't as innocent as they make themselves out to be. The reason why there is so little on them is that they delete messages, manipulate their fan base, and repurpose words, social media, and screenshots to their advantage. You honestly should be screenshotting everything said between you and Kique and Staz, because at any time, if they turn on you, you will be given the same treatment as Shade did. And if you think this is an isolated incident, that is far from the case. Another incident that I've become aware of is when Staz attacked a smaller artist over having the same koi fish colors as her. Like, I couldn't make this shit up if I tried. Girl, you need to fucking chill.
Some Google image search for koi fish, multicolored koi fish, in fact. If you notice that there's multiple colors in a lot of the tri-colored koi fish, there only have 3 colors, and the one that I made has black, orange, gold, and the base color of white. I actually also got inspiration from a video game that's on my phone called Zen Koi that talks about the Japanese lore of koi fish grow up to be fish dragons. It's actually a really nice, relaxing game. I'd go check it out. I am really disappointed that fact that a larger creator is going after a smaller creator who does this as a hobby. It's sad, but I think we should do some story times of this, and this is inspiring me. I think I might make a koi fish for every koi fish I have in that game. I think that'll be a fun series. Anyway, I am sorry for people who have been offended, but seriously, stop being deal holes. Alrighty, here's the...
Staz has done this multiple times, allegedly. I will link to Val's first video as this can give you an introduction into the ongoing comic. Keep in mind this video was produced 3 years ago, and the comic and its creators, as implied in my own video, have actually gotten worse. Kique has always had a history of this, and Staz is following in his footsteps, if not flat out being told what to do by Kique himself, allegedly. And because of this incident, expect me to critique your comic with the same research, logic, and sense of humor that I have. Staz, you don't scare me, and contrary to what you might believe, you aren't the queen at drawing. Now, as we are at the end of the video, I'm going to go ahead and do my end before the haters come to this video. Yes, my comments will remain open, as well as a downvote icon. One thing about how YouTube works is that engagement, whether positive or negative, will drive more traffic to this video. You will actually be doing me a favor by commenting or leaving a vote, so it's your move. To anyone that learned anything from this video, I thank you for watching. If anything I said that you feel is an error, by all means correct me, but understand that there is a difference between fact and a feeling. I'm not concerned about your feelings, but by all means, your thoughts should be displayed. I may or may not respond, but don't worry, I will at least have read it, and I'll even do you a solid and won't delete your comment. It drives up my engagement, and that means more people will view this, not only on YouTube, but if they search for Staz or Kique's name on, let's say, Google, this video is going to pop up as a recommended. If anyone would like to get in contact with me, feel free. My DMs are open. However, to any troll that decides to use this method, I'm not obligated to respond to you, and likely won't because I've invested my time in other things. For any ex-fans of Kique and Staz, I will always be opening to listen to your stories regarding these two creators. What I would like to do is take screenshots of their bad behavior so the community at large knows who these people are and to stop supporting them. If I feel that their actions warrant a video, then I'll make one. But the caveat is, you need to provide proof. I'm not interested in the he said she said type of deal. The only reason why this video is going up was because I was there, in chat, watching as all these scenes played out. I'm a part of Shay's support system. I helped her deal with the damage you were inflicting on her as she needed. No, she deserved vindication. That's the only reason why this video got made. So, that's all I've got for you today. Please stay healthy and safe, darlings. Asher out.